right, thanks, guys. CDs will be sold in Holt Lodge. CDs will be in Holt Lodge after the meeting. And we have asked David H. to introduce our speaker.
I'm an addict named David. Hi, family. Well, I have been given the privilege of introducing our speaker, and I can say that this man truly works for Narcotics Anonymous every day of his life. And some of us may have even talked to him on the phone or know him from other things, but I'm not going to go into that. But I do know that in my interactions with Steve, I don't know. Sometimes you meet somebody that just has that demeanor that just really feels comfortable, and I felt that with Steve, and I'm privileged to be able to introduce him tonight. They flew in from California on a red-eye flight, and that coupled with jet lag, I really believe that he's tired enough that he might really be very honest with us tonight. And with that, I give you Steve R.
Already rearranging the furniture up here. Get all the electronics sitting right. My name's Steve. I'm an addict. And I am a Ripley virgin. We were at the Friday night welcome meeting, and people were saying that, and I told my wife I might use that phrase, and she gave me an elbow, and she said, "You haven't been able to call yourself a virgin in a long time," and I said, "Yeah, I'm going to take his chance," and so I am. This is the first time I've been here, and but while I reside in a city called Los Angeles, I got clean in a city called Pittsburgh, and well, let me say something good now before you start taking my inventory. Give me a second here, and work with me. I've been hearing about the Ripley event for a long, long time, but is there anybody from the kitchen staff in the room? Raise your hand if you're from the kitchen staff. Good. They used to talk good about the food here. What happened? It was like, pork chops this thick, and, man. Some things never change, but other things do. And, it's, the welcome meeting really was a great springboard, I guess, or launch for me. It ignited for me what is the energy that obviously many people tap into here, and why so many people. Something tells me that ain't gonna be the first time that happens tonight. Why so many people find this a great place to recharge the spiritual energy, and so thank you to the folks that made it possible for me and my wife to be here. Thank you for those who've opened up your home and welcomed us here. And welcome to the new people. And not just those of us so-called newcomers, but the people who are new to Narcotics Anonymous. Welcome. This is real. This ain't some imagined thing. This is how we are. We're a society, a fellowship of people who live and enjoy life without the use of drugs. And it's a powerful thing we do here. And some of us dress up like Elvis. What can I say? So where I come from, Pittsburgh, there's a woman, she's gone now. Her name was Dot T. And I heard Dot T say one time, getting asked to speak is kind of like, it's kind of like marriage. She said, I don't want to get married, I just want to get asked. And, I find this experience much like that. That it is, now don't get me wrong, I love being married. I'm not trying to say that. But being asked to speak is an honor. I mean, anytime I get the opportunity to be privileged to act as a representative of Narcotics Anonymous, the fellowship that not only saved my life, but has changed the lives of virtually everybody who I've come in contact in 26 years. That fellowship, the fellowship that gives me release from the self-obsession that puts my hunger for a chemical in front of the lives of my children. Representing that fellowship is an honor. I mean, I get goosebumps. It's an honor. Doing it's a whole nother story, though. I walk my dogs. I live out in, we call it Los Angeles because it sounds good. I'm not really from Los Angeles. I'm from a little town called Canyon Country, and it's about as far away from South Central as you can get. And in fact, the next stop is the Mojave Desert. Okay, so I'm up there in the hills, and most mornings I'll take my dogs out in the hills, and I'll walk with my dogs. I got a chocolate lab and just the most loving, caring pit bull I've ever seen. I wish some of my sponsees were that loving. Anyways, we can take that part out, right? Yeah, okay. Boy, I said some good shit up there. I mean, when I was in the hills and we were walking with the dogs, I was like, hey, Jake, hang on, I got this one. And Tor, wait a minute, you got to hear this one. Because these in the interest of representing this fellowship, I'm invested in what I say. And it's important to me that if somebody is here and has the ability to hear something that'll change them, that if I'm that vehicle, that I be available for that. So I've been practicing, as much as I don't want to. And but I'm going to set all that aside now and just simply let it be whatever it's going to be. And if nobody else gets nothing out of this, well, then maybe it'll be me. Because you never know who you're carrying the message to. One night we were at the Tri-State Convention. I remember we were in the Hilton Hotel, and it was one of the waiters from the banquet that heard the message that night. He hadn't been clean up until that night, and after that night he became a member of Narcotics Anonymous. I don't know if any of the other 2,500 people in the room got anything, but he did. And then there was another night when I went up to Meadville, Pennsylvania, nice little town in northern Pennsylvania. Meadville, there's a couple people here from Meadville. We'll get to that. And they're a little rambunctious. They don't get out much. And I went up there. They were having an event, and just a little. There might have been 30, 40 people. It was a nice little intimate event. And I got a couple of kids. Between the two of us, my wife and I have 6. And I got the 2 oldest, and she's got the 4 youngest. My son and daughter came with me to that event, like they've come with me to many NA events. They grew up in the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous, hearing all that lovely language we use. And I exposed them to, we all make our own choices with our children, and I don't know if there's anyone's right or wrong, but My kids come to me with Narcotics Anonymous events. That's just the way it was. And so they came to me with me to that event, and they heard my story that night, and we were coming home, and my then 22, 23-year-old daughter just breaks down weeping, and reveals that she's been using. She was away at college, and so we weren't aware, and she's been using, and using the way we use, and ending up in places we end up, and doing the shit that we do, and that night she was who was hearing the message. So you just never know. You just never know who's going to hear the message, and so I hope that happens for somebody tonight. I started using with my cousin Danny. My cousin Danny and me, we got a quart of Wellwood contact cement, and we got a couple of brown paper bags. And there was a guy named Mike Jury, and he was a little older than us. And Mike Jury showed us how to pour the glue in the bags and hold the bags on our face and inhale the vapors until we were unconscious. I was 11, 12, something like that. I was in 6th grade. And I reflect on that for 2 reasons. One, we don't have a list of drugs that qualify you for membership in here in Narcotics Anonymous, but I'm fairly confident if we did, Wellwood contact cement would be on that list. And I'm going to tell you, it got me high. And and the other thing I like to recollect about that is, unlike some of us who came in here, sipping a couple of beers or smoking a little weed on the weekends as a social experience, I would suggest to you that sniffing glue is not a social experience. I was never a social glue sniffer. I put my face in that bag for one reason, and you know what? Maybe it wasn't for one reason. Maybe it was for 2. For one reason, to feel different. That was for sure. And the other reason, I'm pretty sure, was to fit in. To be like Danny and Mike. And those 2 things have been, a part of my experience, both using and in recovery. That, running away from the way I felt and wanting to feel different was a constant. And, not being able to feel like I fit in was a part of who I was too. And even today, sometimes it can be a part of who I am. I'm in recovery, but that doesn't mean that obsession and compulsion aren't a part of, a part of me. They still can be. And that was a Saturday or a Friday, I can't remember, that we did that quart of Wellwood. It's been a long time. Truth is, I don't even remember it. I just remember the story. You know what I mean? It's getting now where I don't remember what actually happened. I just remember the story. And but I'm pretty sure that we went up in the weeds and finished that quart of Wellwood the next day. And we'd get that shit all over us, because you go unconscious, and that it would just, you'd put too much in, it would just be a mess. And lying and telling stories about how that happened, and unmanageability was with me from the beginning. Lying and in that deceitful lifestyle that we embrace, or that we take on, was with me from the beginning. I was 11 or 12, and I used until I was 29. I used whatever came in front of me. I'd shoot, smoke, snort, you name it, I'd do it. I used drugs that I didn't know what they were before I put them in my body. I used rigs that other people used. I did whatever I had to do to get the chemical. And there's one thing more than anything else that I always remember, is that when the chemical was present, I always used. Always. I try as I might to save a wake up. It never happened for me. Now, I might have fell unconscious and left a little on the table, but I couldn't save a wake up. I can't tell you. There was one time, Christmas Eve, I gave my wife, my previous wife, I've made a few mistakes with that thing, and so help me out here. If you hear me stumble, just kind of say something real. I don't know, do something, create some distraction for me, okay? Because there's somebody over there who might get a little sensitive. It's my wife. I love her. I give Diane my wake up, or not my wake up, but the package, and said, okay, take this, and this is all I'm doing. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, it's Christmas Eve, at 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm chasing her out of the apartment. I am bare-ass naked. And it's wintertime in Pittsburgh. And she jumps into her Pinto station wagon and takes up the road. And you know what I do? I clamp my hand onto the passenger handle, and I hang on. She's dragging me up the road bare-ass naked, 4 o'clock in the morning, Christmas Eve, because she's got the shit and I want it. And I'm not letting go. I mean, it was quite a ride. I never saved a wake up. And I love to use. I mean, I didn't know that all you people were here. I didn't know all you loved to use. I just love to use. When we were kids, there were other guys that, would stay, we'd keep pace with one another, and there were 6 of us, and then there were 4 of us, and then it was just me and Steve. My partner's name was Steve, and it was him and me. And, we'd be sitting in his apartment, and, before dawn, about 20 minutes, half hour before dawn, them birds start. And they hadn't even come up yet, and they do that thing they do. And we'd be sitting in his apartment and just wanting to kill every one of them birds, one by one, slow and hard, just ripping their wings out or something. I don't know what, but because they were they were reality, coming in, that this night was over. And I remember leaving his house many mornings and looking at people going to work in their cars and clean and shaven and thinking like somebody dropped me off from another planet. Like I didn't belong, I wasn't part of humanity. And but Steve was like me. And if we were partners, and I had his back and he had mine, and if I got up to take a piss, he'd steal my shit, and if he got up to take a piss, his was mine too, and we knew that about each other. There were some things you could depend on in our relationship, and that was one of them, because we just we understood that was the appetite for the chemical came in front of everything, and. So I got a couple of stories here I'm going to tell you. I tell them every time. My wife told me to find some new stories, and I don't remember any. So these, you get them. And I'll tell them quick, make it a little easier on her. The first one was the winter time before I got clean. I got clean 1986, August 3rd, 1986. I'm 26 years clean. And it was a winter time. It was a Pittsburgh winter. I had wrecked my car a week earlier, and I wrecked my wife's car a couple of days after that. Things weren't going real good at my house, and I lived on this little remnant of a farm, a little 1-acre hunk of land. And when we moved into there, my brother-in-law gave me this old beat-up garden tractor, and it was parked in the garage. This old yellow Sears 15 horsepower garden tractor, and it was wintertime, it was February, and I needed to score, and I didn't have a car, and my wife's car was gone, and the connection wasn't delivering. I mean, there was a time when the connection delivered, You know, it was a time when I had credit. You know, there was a time when, you know, people welcomed me into their home. And, you know, I can tell you the winter before I got clean, none of that was there anymore. And so I went in the garage and I climbed on this garden tractor and I went on down Route 88 to Cop. And there's a couple of pieces of that story that I sometimes tell, but, you know, the one thing about it was when I pulled up onto the dope man lived in suburbia. You know, he kept a low profile, and he had this nice little split level, and it's February, and this tractor's making a lot of noise, and you know, and it's me on it, right? And you know, and I come tooling in onto his front yard, and he just comes out on his front stoop, and he looks at me, and he says, "What the are you doing?" You know, and I said, "You know, I'm here to get high. Let's go." You know, I tell that story almost every time. It gets more laughs than it does sometimes in others. Sometimes I put more into it. I'm kind of getting wore out on it, but what I will tell you is I told it one time to a guy in Wisconsin. His name is John Halverson. And he said, "You know what, Steve, in Wisconsin, everybody cops on a tractor." And I said, "No big deal." And you know what? Judging from the John Deere shirts and hats, I'm guessing I'm not the only guy in this room that's done that either. And so I got another one. Here's another one. This is the last one, hopefully. So a couple of years before that, I was, in my past life, I was a certified executive chef. I worked in hotels and restaurants for 25 years, and when I was working in one place, we had a guy who stole some money, and we knew who it was, and so we wanted him to take a lie detector test, but we couldn't have just him take the lie detector test. So everybody on the shift that night was to take the lie detector test, and since I was the chef, the sous chef on that night, and I was the guy in charge of the kitchen, well, I was going to be the first one to take the lie detector test. I didn't steal the money. I didn't have nothing to lie about. And so I was absolutely fine with this. And so they set up the test. You know, an off-duty cop, a detective, and the lie detector guy, whoever that was. And I got the phone call to come up to the office and take the test. The office was at a different location than the restaurant. And so I'm about to leave, and I get another phone call, and it's from my connection, and he's got something. I was presented with a dilemma. I had two choices. I could go and take the lie detector test and hope against hope that package was still waiting for me, or I could do what I'm guessing 90% of us in the room would do, and I could stop and pick up the package on my way to taking the test. Of course that's what you do, right? See? I'm not the only guy. And then I know I'm not the only guy in the room that once you get it, you got to check it, you know, and make sure. And, you know, I don't know how much of this half a gram of cocaine I consumed, but I can tell you it was a fair amount, and it was a fairly good quality. And so I show up at this office, and they hook me up to a blood pressure cuff. Something to measure my heartbeat. They're looking into my eyes, seeing if they're dilated or not. And then they start asking me really hard questions like, "What's your name?" You know? "Where do you live?" And the needles are, they're doing this. And they're looking at each other, and they're looking at me, and, with this, "What are you, stupid?" And they never did get around to ask me if I stole any money. They disconnected the machine, and guess what? I got fired. What a surprise, right? What a surprise. Any normal, rational human being would have known that was going to be the outcome of that sequence of events. I got to tell you, I didn't have an option there. I did exactly what I had to do. When the chemical was present, I always used. And, it placed my children. The people that the two things I cherish most in life are my children. And I placed their lives in jeopardy more than once, way more than once, over using the chemical or getting the chemical. I put them in cars that they should never have been in. I left them behind to go get it when I should never have done that. And I was charged with their care when I couldn't even take care to get myself to the bathroom. And that's where using the chemical takes me. I don't know if I was, when me and Danny cracked open that first quart of Wellwood, if I'd have known where it was going to take me, if I'd have been able to change that course. I'm not sure. But what I do know was, in the winter of '86, I just ran out of steam. I couldn't do it anymore. I mean, I didn't know how to live with or without drugs. I just didn't. And you know what? That reminds me. Can I use that basic text? Because there's a piece. This basic text is an interesting document. With every book comes a book gnome. You know what the book gnome is, don't you? That's that little creature that lives somewhere inside the book. You can't never find them. But when you put the book down, he or she, I'm not sure what their gender is, they put new words in the book. And so when you pick up the book and you read it again, you find something that wasn't there. And I found something. Actually, I was at a meeting, and they found it for me. So I can't take, but there's a piece of this. It's just absolutely. This is in the how it works after the portion we read, and before the step one essay. When we were using, reality became so painful that oblivion was preferable. We tried to keep other people from knowing about our pain. We isolated ourselves and lived in prisons that we built with loneliness. Through this desperation, we sought help in Narcotics Anonymous. When we came to NA, we are physically, mentally, and spiritually bankrupt. We have hurt so long that we are willing to go to any lengths to stay clean. Our only hope is to live by the example of those who have faced our dilemma and found a way out. Regardless of who we are, where we came from, what we have done, we're accepted in NA. Our addiction gives us common ground for understanding one another. As a result of attending a few meetings, we begin to feel like we finally belong somewhere. It's in these meetings that we were introduced to the 12 steps of Narcotics Anonymous. We learned to work the steps in order and to use them on a daily basis. The steps are our solution. They're our survival kit. They're the defense against addiction, which is a deadly disease. Our steps are the principles that make our recovery possible. Thank you. So I came to my first Narcotics Anonymous meeting. I didn't know about Narcotics Anonymous. There was a guy that told me a little bit in 1982, and he was a heroin addict. I wasn't a heroin addict. He was living under a bridge. I had a job. I was glad Jack found it, but I didn't need it. And then in 1986, I was institutionalized for the first time, and they actually, this funny thing, when you're institutionalized, they make you abstain from all drugs. And there's a funny thing, when you didn't put a chemical in me, I went into a pretty severe withdrawal. And it had been the first time since I don't know how long, that I hadn't used a chemical. And, I began to feel the physical withdrawal of my addiction. And there was this little business card up in the day room where we drank our coffee, and it was a Double Bubble. Double Bubble was a meeting up in Aliquippa, Pennsylvania, one of the first meetings in Western Pennsylvania, and it said Double Bubble, Narcotics Anonymous. If you want to stop using, we can help, or whatever that phrase is that we use on many of our posters. And I just like the name. Narcotics Anonymous. I liked it. And I didn't know anything about abstinence. I couldn't imagine couldn't imagine living without a chemical, some chemical. I knew cocaine was the devil's drug. It made me do shit that I would never ever do otherwise. And, alcohol ran me into enough telephone poles that I knew that couldn't be part of my life either. And, but weed, come on, it's an herb, But they took me to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. They put me in one of them long white vans and took me to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. And it's just like it says in that book. First thing, most important for me, was when I walked into the door to that NA meeting, there was a guy standing outside the door. His name was Duncan. He was a mountain of a man. He had to be 6'5", 6'7", I don't know, maybe 6'9". I don't know how big he was. But he was at the door, and he welcomed me to his home group. He welcomed everybody to walk through that door that night and gave me a hug, and welcomed me to my first Narcotics Anonymous meeting. So I wasn't even in the door, and I felt the love of Narcotics Anonymous. I didn't know at the moment what kind of impact that was going to have on me. I sat in the room, felt like there were this many people there. I think there were a few less, but it felt like there were a lot of people. I left that first meeting knowing. I didn't stay clean from that first meeting. I wish I could tell you I did. I didn't stay clean from that first meeting, but I can tell you, for me, it didn't take a few. It only took one. I knew for me the way out was through Narcotics Anonymous. I didn't know what all the details of that were about. I had no idea what sponsorship was or what working the steps meant. But I knew for me that my relief was here in Narcotics Anonymous. And I got to tell you, they let me out of that institution, and I went to a meeting. I went to a meeting that same day they let me out, and it was at a hospital, and the Jefferson Hospital meeting. I don't know if it still meets up there or not, but that room is such that you can get in and out of that room. There's not one entranceway. There's a bunch of different ways in and out of the room. So I got in there without any greeter. Nobody greeted me. Nobody welcomed me to that meeting. And I had a completely different experience that night in that meeting. It's all right. Since then, not since that moment, but since I've been able to really internalize that experience, I'm on the door at my home group. You come to Thursday, Courage to Change, Newhall, California. If I ain't on the door, that means I'm out of town. I'm there on the door welcoming people to my home group, welcoming them to Narcotics Anonymous. I'm honoring Duncan's legacy. How many people in this room, raise your hand if somebody showed you how to do something to serve the fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous. Somebody showed you how to make coffee or put up literature. And think about that person for a minute. Just take a second and think about Duncan. Think about Shannon. Think about the person who dragged you into your first service meeting or showed you how to put up chairs. Or, you were talking about Rocco, and how many people in this room did Rocco touch through his service delivery efforts? That's the legacy that we have here in Narcotics Anonymous. We have the ability to not only touch people, but 26 and a half years later, that one hug that Duncan gave me, I still carry. That's a powerful thing we do for one another. We don't realize it sometimes, I think. But it's important occasionally for me to stay in contact with that, the power of the therapeutic value of one addict and helping another, and how oftentimes it happens when we don't even know we're doing it. So that was the beginning. That was the end of May of 1986. They let me out of the institution, and I went out in the garage a couple days later, I had a little weed up in the garage above where I keep the tractor, and it had been however long it had been, a month and a half, and I hadn't been a month and a half since I was 12, and so I did it, and And 3 days later, I'm sitting in an apartment with these people that I swore I'd never be with, doing shit I swore I'd never do again, wondering how the hell did I get here? And I learned through that summer. I made a number of different mistakes. Most of them revolved around the fact that I was unwilling to do the 5, what I identify through what I read in the basic text as the 5 tenets of the Narcotics Anonymous program. We go to meetings, we get a sponsor, we work steps, we find a way to be of service, and we pray. Those are the measures that I use for my application or my surrender to the program in Narcotics Anonymous. You may have a different recipe, and that's okay. Whatever works for you is fine. I'm just telling you this one works for me. It's what got me clean. It's what keeps me clean. And when the craziness, when it's working overtime up here, those are the 5 things I check on. And that first summertime, boy, it's getting hot in here, huh? That first summertime, you all ain't doing what I'm doing, so you're probably not near as hot. That first summertime, here he comes again. Told you I wouldn't be the last time. That's okay, brother. If I look like that, I'll be leaving too. Just kidding. Couldn't pass that one up. Until I was willing to do some measure of all 5 of those things, because I don't know that I've ever done all 5 of them perfect, until I was willing to do some measure of all 5 of those things, I could not stay clean. And it was a bitch, because I don't know that there's a lonelier place. Up until that point in my life, I had never been lonelier. I couldn't go back with the guys I was using with, because I get high, and you know what I start talking about? Narcotics Anonymous. They don't want to hear about that. And I couldn't get high enough. And somebody else said it. I heard somebody else say it sometime this weekend. Coming here high, oh man, that just, that's a hard thing to do. I felt more alone than I ever did. I had this basement where I had these 50 gauge can liners on the window. I had this one little dinky window, and I had a sleeping bag and a can lighter, because I didn't want to let one bit of sunshine in, because I didn't want to know what time of day it was. And I spent a lot of time alone in that little room. And I was way lonelier in those couple of months being between clean and using than I was in that room. I don't know what it is. But there's and I don't have any other way to describe it. I don't do a whole lot of analysis of how this thing works. But what I can tell you is there seems to be a coming together of desperation and opportunity that occurs for us. And I'll tell you something about it that I believe is true, and that is it's fleeting. It's not something that's always available. For us, the opportunity, we live in a place where the opportunity to hear Narcotics Anonymous and to find it is relatively consistent. Certainly there's some from communities where that may be not true. The communities I've lived in, I could always find a Narcotics Anonymous meeting if I wanted one. But that desperation that results in willingness, now that's another story. Because, the flip side of that willingness and desperation is denial. And I got to tell you, I'm 26 years clean, and denial continues to be a challenge for me. I don't deny that I'm an addict. I know I'm an addict. But I recently worked a 6 and 7 step again with my sponsor. And we got done doing 6 and 7, and about a month or two later, I was just getting pounded with this issue. And he says, well, look at your 6-step list and see what you wrote about on it. And so I look at my 6-step list. It ain't even there. And I go back to him and I said, it ain't even there. How can this not be there? How can it be this big and not be on my list? And he said, well, you weren't ready. I said, why didn't you tell me? And he said, you weren't ready. Denial at 22 years clean continues to be a challenge for me. But August 2nd, August 3rd, I don't know why. It wasn't any worse a day, any better a day. I didn't get a boatload and use it or, get arrested by the DEA. They're in the house here, by the way. No pictures, remember, no pictures. But I got up on August 3rd after using August 2nd, after leaving a midnight meeting on August 2nd using, and I got up on August 3rd. So you could argue that August 4th is my clean date, but we'll talk about that another day. Anyways, I'm making a joke about a very serious moment in my life, anyways, because it was when that confluence of willingness and opportunity existed, and I was able to take advantage of that. And August 3rd, I stayed clean. And I've been getting the day ever since. And, the whole world changed. I mean, that's all. It's just the whole world changed. It took a little while. Key tags became, so important. When I got up for my 9-month key tag, I wasn't sure I was going to make it back to my chair. I mean, I was so overwhelmed. I felt like I was going to faint. I felt like I was going to, it sounds kind of feminine, but, I can wear pink today, right? I felt like I was going to faint. And I almost didn't make it back to my chair. So I did what we do. I did. I got a sponsor. I was scared to death to ask this guy to sponsor me. He made it really easy, and I asked him to sponsor me, and he said yes. And he gave me my first NA T-shirt, which kicked off another obsession. I ended up with 300 before I pulled the plug on that. And boxes and boxes. I mean boxes and boxes. That ain't counting the mugs. You guys know. I know there's a few of you in here. I seen you in the merchandise room. I know that look. I go back in for the third time, after I've gone back to my room and counted my money twice. I go, let me go get one more. There's a blue one down there I need. I was a year and a half clean, and I was chairing the area service committee meeting, and a guy come up to me at a break, and he said, this meeting would go a whole lot better if you didn't look like you wanted to murder everybody in the room. And, I loved service. I loved the energy of it, and I did. I loved the debate and the gamesmanship that we often exhibited in it back then. The problem with it is, we were talking about this earlier, the problem with it is not long, it's just me and the other guys who like doing that in the room. And everybody else went home. And, but there's no doubt that for me that service at the group level and service beyond the group level has been a big part of my recovery, my program, and my membership in the fellowship. I've met people in service. Where you at? Yeah, I've met people in service that are in the room since the mid-1980s, and guys that are on my phone since then. Guys that I cleaned ashtrays with and set up chairs with. And, when I got here, I wasn't real social. I spent a lot of time in that basement. And, I didn't know how to talk to people. But I could put up chairs. I could wash ashtrays. And I'd go early, and there'd be 3 or 4 or 5 people there. And it wasn't 30 or 40 or 50. And I could do that. And I got comfortable. It took me a couple of years. So if you're uncomfortable coming to Narcotics Anonymous, I was too. Know that somebody else was. And I'm guessing you and me ain't the only two. And I'm talking a couple of years it took me to get comfortable in NA. So at about 4 years clean, I got diagnosed with this disease in my hips called avascular necrosis. It's a hardening of the bones. They wear out like chalk. And I had to get a series of surgeries. And back then, there were a lot of guys that were, you bite the bullet and you do whatever they got. You go to the dentist, you don't take it, you do whatever. And so I didn't want to release the beast. So I did that surgery on local anesthesia. It was hip surgery. And they tried to talk me out of it, and I wouldn't have it. And so the day came, they took me in the room, they put me in the vise, because that's what they do when they're working on you, they put you in a vise. And there's plastic on the walls, like they're getting ready to paint a car. And the stainless steel bench was there, and there was this is no shit, there was a hammer, there was a chisel, and there was a drill. And the surgeon comes in with a Camel non-filter, and this one I remember. This ain't just a story. I remember this one. A Camel non-filter stuck up underneath his ear. He's got some chest hair coming out of his little blue scrubs. A gold chain with a dolphin on it, and he's flirting with the nurse. And and the Temptations are playing on the boombox up in the corner. And I got a heightened degree of awareness of what's going on in the room. And I'm like 30 seconds into that experience, and I knew I made a big mistake. Shit's flying, and I'm smelling and hearing, and it just wasn't good. So it came time to do the other hip, and I said, I've learned my lesson. I'm going to take general anesthesia, but you need to hook me up with the anesthesiologist. I need to sit down and have a conversation with that guy, because I'm a long-term, high-dose recreational drug user, and he may need a little more for me than he's used to using. And I was getting a free one. I mean, I wasn't saying that to you. I wasn't even saying it to me, I don't think. But somewhere back in my head, I was getting a free one. It had been 4.5 years since I was getting a free one. And and the day came, and I'm bare ass naked on them cold gurneys, and the anesthesiologist comes over, and he hooks up the plumbing, and he starts doing what he does, and it came on me, and that familiar obsession, that I'm still conscious, I need more. You didn't give me enough yet. Was on me, just like somebody switching on a light switch, and that was familiar. That was something that I hadn't expected, but I certainly recognized. I wanted that gone. I wanted that gone right now, and it's funny when you don't have it for a while, and then when it comes on you like that, I don't feel like I had 4.5 years of recovery, and in 4.5 years I go back, to that place where we are when we took the last one. At least that's where it took me. And then the other thing it did is it completely shut down that part of me that was connected to my spirit. Again, just like that light switch. And boy, I learned something through that experience. I learned, I learned the power of, just like it says in the basic text, my body does not know the difference between splitting a bag with Steve and getting something from an anesthesiologist in a hospital. I just don't, my body don't know the difference. And probably more importantly, my brain don't know the difference. It kicks off this whole thing. And I've had a dozen surgeries since then. My most recent, they give me a new hip. And I just tell you a little bit about that. They show you this thing in the doctor's office, this model of the hip, right, of the hip replacement. It's about this big. And what they put in me, I'm not kidding you. My wife, 14 inches long. Am I lying, babe? Say I'm not lying. There you go. That's my girl. She's never that subordinate. Thank you for that. Might not have been the right word to use. Help me out. Every one of them surgeries have been different. Every single one of them surgeries have been different. Sometimes I skate through them. I had back surgery. They wanted to give me chemical. I said, take it off. I'm done. It was 12 hours after the surgery. They said, it's going to hurt. I said, I don't care. I got this. Other times, all I wanted was more. Sometimes I was able to speak the truth as it was happening, and other times I had to wait till it was over. What I learned about going through medication and recovery is every single one of them is different. And it's just like going into a bar and coming out clean. Just because I went into the bar and came out clean yesterday don't mean I can go in and come out clean tomorrow. And it's exactly the same with prescribed medication and surgeries for me. The other thing that experience taught me was living within my physical limitations. One of the things that I like to do is, like I said, denial is a big part of my who I am. It's not just a big part of my disease. I mean, it's a big part of Steve. And, I like to deny my physical limitations sometimes. And, this experience with this disease and some of the other stuff that I've had, the hip disease I'm talking about, has really taught me about physical limitations. 10 years clean, my first wife, told me we couldn't be married anymore. We've been married for 18 years. It launched this, this process that resulted in the end of that marriage. Well, it wasn't the end. We completed it. That marriage gave me 2 wonderful children. I still have love in my heart for that woman, for my first wife. I have care and compassion for her, and she has it for me. But we were done. And you know what? It's okay to be done. Sometimes I'll drag it out and kick it and beat it, and it's dead, and I'm still squeezing, and it was done a long time ago. It really taught me the lesson of how relationships evolve and how they change. And just like when I was standing at the door of Duncan's home group, not knowing that I was getting ready to walk in to take the next step in my life that was going to change my world, I didn't know it at the time that she had the courage, because she was the one who had the courage to say it. I knew it, but she was the one who said it. And the courage to move through that provided me with the opportunities that never ever would have come my way otherwise. At least I don't think. Certainly I wouldn't be married to my wife. I love my wife. She is my partner. I can't say enough good things about her and her recovery. And that ain't happening, I had trouble enough. I have trouble enough with one. I couldn't imagine dealing with 2. Yeah, okay. One of the things that happened right around that time was my mom was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and she died 1999, December 12th, 1999. And, as a part of that and the evolution of that first marriage, I was really struck with the lesson that nothing is all bad nor all good. As hard as my lesson was with watching my mom die, and holding her hand, and listening to her talk, and asking her to tell me stories about when she was a kid. There was some beauty, some magnificence in that process that none of us escapes. And it taught me the lesson that nothing's all bad nor all good. And my responsibility is to seek the good. If I can seek the good, I can learn lessons from it. And sometimes my responsibility is to be the good. Sometimes the only good that's there is what I can bring. Well, you guys taught me. The ability to sit with her and not steal her medication. The ability to make life a little easier for my ex-wife and leave the washer and dryer behind instead of tearing it apart bit by bit so she can't put it back together again. it never struck me to be the good. I mean, I wanted to be the good. Don't get me wrong. Before I found Narcotics Anonymous, I wanted to be a good person. I always wanted to be a good person. I just never could. I just couldn't get it. It never came to me. There was always this obsession in the way. So I just want to talk a little bit about just a couple of steps. I ain't going to take you all through all 12. How long? What am I doing here? Where we at? Okay. So first 3 steps. Invaluable for me. I didn't realize that when I was walking through that door to Duncan's home group that I was exercising some measure of the first 3 steps. That the honesty that I need to find recovery is about self-honesty. It's about saying to myself, the whole friggin' world knew that anybody who came in contact with me knew I was a drug addict. It didn't take an Einstein, by the way, he's here too. It didn't take an Einstein to figure out that I was a drug addict. The people in front of me in the grocery store knew I was a drug addict. I was a belligerent drug addict. I didn't hide my using. And nor could I if I wanted to. But I was the only one who was unwilling to accept the fact that I was an addict. So that honesty that I need to get clean is about being honest with myself. The second step, the open-mindedness. I came here with the mentality of, if there's 5 rules, I got to do 3 of them and I can skate on the other 2. I've been cutting the angles for as long as I can remember. We weren't allowed to get our Easter candy until after 10:30 Mass. I'd get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and find my Easter basket and steal a little bit to get me through Mass. I've been cutting the angles for as long as I can remember. And I was not open-minded to what you had to tell me. When you would say, Steve, I think you need to do this, I'd say, yeah, I got it. I'm okay here. You don't understand. Yeah, but. Somebody told me to go to a meeting. And I was desperate enough to recognize that I needed help. And it may be that in a meeting I could find it. And then the willingness to actually pick myself up and go to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting, to walk through the door. And we all know that ain't an easy trip. That is not an easy trip. And, it's those 3 basic tenets, those 3 basic principles that continue today to be a primary resource in me finding the juice of this program. And I gotta, I'm not a philosophical kind of guy. I'm an eggs over easy, bacon toast kind of a guy. I don't make too many souffles. I made a couple, they didn't work out so hot. But I make a hell of an omelet. I'm a real kind of basic guy. And when you start getting into highbrow philosophy, it's an interesting discussion for me, but I don't find much value on a how does this work in my life level. When you tell me willingness is doing what you don't want to do, I can measure that one. That I know when I'm doing what I don't want to do. Most of my life I didn't do what I don't want to do unless it was about getting and using. And then I did it. Even today, I find myself in conversation with my sponsor, and I always know when there's second step issues because I say things in my head like, he don't get it. Yeah, he's too old. He's square. He's going to listen to this tape. Steve, I love you, man. I love you. I do. He is perfect for me. He as perfect as my wife is a partner, he is a perfect sponsor for me in this moment. That don't mean he's going to be perfect in 5 years or 10 years, but right now he's exactly what I need. And And he took me into 6 and 7. He said, we need to do 1, 2, and 3 so I can get you to 6 and 7 because I got something to show you. You guys probably already know all this, but I'm going to say it anyways. He took me to 6 and 7 and he said, okay, we're going to dissect your defects. I want you to sit down. I want you to write about your defects. I want to write about how they show up in your life, how they affect the people you love, how they separate you from your higher power, what your life would be without these defects of character. And I did that. And I mean, every one of those defects, I began to get a map, a portrait of each and every one of these defects. And defects are a funny thing. For me anyways, most of them are situational. I started riding a motorcycle again in 1999, and I took those motorcycle safety training courses, and they said to me, most motorcycle accidents happen in one of 6 ways. And they showed me the 6 different situations that motorcycle accidents happen. Motorcycle accidents and my defects of character are similar. My defects of character are situational. There are certain situations that I'm fairly confident I'm going to struggle with a defect of character. You take me to an area service committee meeting, and I got a couple of defects of character are going to come up for me. They don't come up anywhere else in my life. You take me back to sitting down with my ex-wife, and there's a couple of defects that are going to come up. You put me with my kids, there's a couple of defects that are going to come up. Put me on the highway, there's a couple of defects that are going to come up. And, they're situational. And by creating these portraits of each of them, I became intimately aware of what they are, what they smell like, what they look like coming over the horizon. And then when we were done with that, he said, okay, I want you to identify some contrasting spiritual principles for each one of those defects. And I did that. And he said, those are going to be the things you aspire towards. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, that was a paradigm shift in the way I've been dealing with my defects up until then. I tried to not do stuff. I'm going to tell you something. I can't not do anything. There is maybe something. There are very few things I could not do. Certainly, when it came time to get clean, Nancy Reagan's just say no. Just say no. That didn't work for me. I couldn't just say no to using, and I couldn't just say no to a defect of character either. I never met a defect of character I couldn't say just say no to. But give me something different. Now that's a whole different story. When we tell somebody that they want to get clean, we don't say just say no. We say come here, do something different, go to meetings, call somebody, pick up a piece of literature, do something different. Those are spiritual practices. It's the same thing for me with my defects of character. When I see a defect of character coming over the horizon, I know what it looks like now. If I'm paying attention, I know what it looks like. And I got a list of stuff. I got a list of spiritual principles that I can aspire towards that many times, I'd like to say always, but it just ain't true, many times help me avoid that defect. And you don't have to ask me if it's changed my life. Ask the people who are around me, and they will tell you that it's been a radical change. And it's caused me to get release from behaviors that have plagued me primarily in my relationships as long as I can remember. And, it's through this. It's through Narcotics Anonymous that works. Okay, one more thing. I've been waiting for an opportunity to talk about this, so I'm just going to say it real quick. I get in my life, I get the opportunity to hear a lot of people talk about the traditions, and I really, really appreciate what everybody says. And I learn and I listen and I read, and I love what you guys do with the traditions here. That's colorful, at least, and you got to know that some people probably really get annoyed with it. Not me, though. Just so you know, there's some people probably squirming in their seats when that's going on. But one of the things that I've become aware of, there's a couple of different things. And I just want to real quick talk about them. And it is that the irony that they were developed back in the 40s when we didn't even exist yet, and there was a smattering of people in recovery. I mean, there was a tiny percentage of what there are. I mean, there's people in Narcotics Anonymous. We're in over 130 countries, and that's just Narcotics Anonymous. That ain't all the other A's. And back then there was just a handful of people, and they got together and they said, we ain't going to be here forever. We need to write down a few things before we die. There's some lessons we've learned that others might benefit from. And they said, okay, so what's the first lesson we need to tell people? I love this. You're going to fight a lot. You're going to fight a lot. Unity is paramount. And they knew we were going to fight a lot. You know why? Because they fought a lot. And the other thing that I think is so important in that, and this one's for me. Not this one, but not only are you going to fight a lot, what's most important ain't who's right. Who's right isn't most important. What's most important is we get along. For a long time, I'm talking a long time, I thought being right was what's most important. It isn't. At least not for me, not anymore. And the second one, I love the second one. The second one, okay, they're going to fight a lot. What's the next thing we need to tell them? Everybody's going to want to be the boss. Everybody's going to want to be the boss. And we make decisions as a group around here. And we got leaders, but they do what we ask them to do. And so I just think that's an interesting and a powerful statement. And then the third one, they looked around what was then the fellowship, and every group had their own list of requirements for membership. Some of them required you had to wear a suit and tie. Some of them required that you had some measure of abstinence. Some of them had other requirements. And they realized if they compiled every one of these lists, that nobody would be eligible for membership. And they realized that we would make judgments about one another. And they said, we need to be without judgment. I got to tell you, when I can take the steps and bring them to life the way Steve has taught me, take those traditions and bring them to life in that way, the way other people have taught me, I am empowered in a way that I never imagined when I showed up at Duncan's Home Group. Never, ever. Not only am I a member of Narcotics Anonymous, I'm a member of the human race today. I'm a son to my parents. I'm a husband to my wife, and I'm a parent to my children, all 6 of them. And, I love Narcotics Anonymous, and just like every single person in here does too. Because that's the other thing that I can never, ever forget. Every single one of us, it saved our lives. The guy that I'm spitting against, spitting in his face, arguing at a meeting over something or another, he loves NA just as much as I do. His children benefited just the same as mine did. And, it's that passion and that commitment that makes our fellowship what it is. Okay, I got one more thing, and then I'm done. This won't take that. Living Clean, the new book. It reminds me of my favorite line in a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. I'm sitting in a men's meeting one day, and a guy sitting there, and he says, left to my own devices, you'll find me on the corner of Hollywood and Vine with a set of black stilettos, fishnet stockings, a leather skirt, and a blonde wig. And there's two guys sitting in front of me. One guy leans over to the other and he says, "What corner did he say?" They're sticking together. Okay. There's a saying in recovery that as we keep going, the road narrows. That's partially true. Our willingness to make the same old mistakes diminishes. We know better than to act on our impulses much of the time. But that's not the end of the story. It's as if we pass through a funnel. The way gets tighter and more uncomfortable as we begin to adapt to our new program of life, our new way of life. And then, without warning, it opens up and we are free. The road is no longer narrow. Sometimes it's like there's no road at all. We move to our rhythm. We find a pace and a direction that's right for us. The trip is inward and never stops. We keep learning to grow, finding ways to live and to use our experience to help others. The more progress we recognize in ourselves and our fellows, the more we know is possible. What first appeared to us to be a way out now offers us a way in, into a life we'd never imagined, into joy, into hope, into growth that never stops. We continue to get better. We continue to discover new ways to live, new freedom, and new paths to explore. We travel together as one fellowship. We pave the road as we walk on it for all who may follow. No matter how far we've come or how far we know we have to go, when we live clean, the journey continues. Thank you.